Hey, we'll be getting started in a couple of minutes. Just wanted to let you know. Right at about 5:31, we'll kick off. Okay, we'll get started in about 1 minute. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started, folks. Just wanted to first off just say welcome to the under 4 through under 6 ABYSA coaches meeting. Appreciate you attending and being part of this. Also, thanks for coaching this season. We really appreciate you stepping forward to be part of the coaching team. Just to kind of jump right into it, I want to first introduce myself. My name's Shane Weems, and I'm the Director of Coaching for ABYSA. I've been in this position for about 15 years and grew up playing the game and, played my whole life, played in college, played a little professionally, and been a director here at the club for quite some time and really love it. And I'm excited to share a little bit about that with you today. I'm going to take you through a PowerPoint presentation and along the way just kind of tell you a little bit about ABYSA. Some of you are returning coaches. Maybe you've had past children come through our program, and then some of you are coaching for the very first time. So I just want to make sure that I cover all the bases for everybody, and just make sure that you know everything that you need to know going into the season. All right, we'll get started. As you can see, our mission statement, I'll let you read that for just a second. But one of the things that I wanted to do here was just to kind of let you know a little bit about who ABYSA and HFC is. I know you probably see the ABYSA logo sometimes, and you see the HFC logo, and just want to kind of let you know what that is. ABYSA and HFC is a full-service soccer club serving players 3 through 75. I say 75 because we have an adult recreation program as well. But our youth side serves players 3 through 18. HFC is our club's competitive division, where players practice more frequently, and they play and they have a paid trainer, and then they play at a little bit higher level than the recreation program. So if you see the word HFC, that's something that you could participate in later as your child gets a little bit older, and we'll go through that here in just a second. So as a club, we offer soccer camps throughout the summer. We have outreach programming where we serve underserved communities. We also have a soccer in the schools program where we send staff out to work with PE teachers in the local community to take their kids through soccer PE, hoping it'd be the funnest PE class they have, and kids obviously would like to play after they go through that. We also offer financial aid to families in pretty much every program. So it's very important to us as an organization that we're serving the community, and that's one of our main focuses. A little cool fact here that you'll see: every year, over 500 parents serve as head coaches or assistant coaches in our program. So you are part of that, and so thank you very much. We're just going to jump right in and kind of talk about what recreation soccer is. Recreation soccer is defined by 3 principles. 1, the formation of teams follows an open or controlled registration policy where every player is accepted and assigned to a team by a random process that's evaluated to ensure a balanced level of play. 2, all competition should be held in a high fun, low stress environment. And 3, every player should play at least half a game. Those 3 components kind of define recreation soccer. Recreation soccer, there's no tryouts. You sign up and you play, and for that reason, we want to make sure everybody plays half the game, and that it's made to be fun. Because one thing that we've learned over the years is that coaches who create a very fun environment tend to have most of their players return. So that's just the main focus. You want to stay friendly and fun, and especially working with the youngest age groups. That's really important. Okay, so I'm going to try to kind of go over the player pathway with you. As you can see in ABYSA, you can play at U4 all the way through 19, U19, and so a player can play in the recreation program all the way through, or at various stages along the way, there's opportunities to move to maybe an HFC program or something along those lines. So as you can see here at the 6U to 9U, so if you're a 6U coach or if you have up to a 9U player, you could be involved in what we call our HFC pre-academy. And that basically is a training program where players participate on their recreation soccer team, but they could come to an additional practice called the pre-academy sessions. And it's just a way to supplement for those players who are wanting to learn more and wanting a little bit more than just the 1 day a week programming that the U4 through U6 program is. It gives them a chance for an extra day of training. Any player in the 6U program can sign up for that, and information will go out about that. Once a player hits 8U, they are now old enough to participate in what we call our HFC Academy. You can kind of see that here on the diagram. HFC Academy is a fantastic program for players who are really engaged in the game and wanting to learn more. That would be the next level, and those players from there can move up the HFC side of things if that's their interest. Also, if that is not their interest, if they try that and they decide that that's not something that they want to follow, but they still love the game and they want to play, they can move back to the recreation program. So you can kind of move back and forth depending on your child's interest along the way through the program, as long as your child's really loving soccer and wanting to play. All right. So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about some things that are going to be new and different this year. Obviously this fall we're having our first season where COVID-19 is part of things, and I'm excited to get back out there. Of course, we canceled our last season right before it was about to begin, so I know you guys are probably excited to come back too, or those of you who are trying it for the first time. You're gonna see some things that are a little different from the way that we're usually doing things. And of course, that's due to COVID-19. So we're going to combine some age groups. I think we've combined the 5 and 6-year-old girls program. So we have a U5/6U girls program, and that just enabled to have plenty of teams and make sure that we had a good number there. And then for you, that program's done a little bit different, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But we have a group there, and then we have our 5 and 6U boys groups separated because we had more players signed up in those particular programs, so we were able to separate those two age groups. So that's kind of how we've broken things up. So we did combine some age groups due to COVID. We're also going to do, we also have some protocols, some COVID-19 protocols and game modifications, and we're going to talk about those here in just a moment. We've also waived the late fee. So if anybody, any of your friends, children want to join, they can join. There's not going to be a late fee this season. We want to certainly encourage people to sign up, and I think, once people know what we're doing and how we're doing it, that could lead to some late signups and things of that nature. We'll talk about all that here in just a minute. You're going to see this graphic here, and I put that in there just to kind of give you an idea on, what are some of the requirements now that COVID-19 is part of our daily lives. And one of the things that happens is that when players are not playing, let's say it's time to play a game and there's players that aren't playing, they're going to have to be spaced apart, and that's going to be new for this year, especially with these younger age groups. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we're going to do that. Obviously these are older players in this photo, so they're a little bit easier to manage than our younger players, but I think we've got some good strategies in place, and we'll talk through those in a minute. But we're going to just kind of go through some of the different rules or protocols for the coach. We're asking that coaches self-assess their health. If they've been exposed or anything along those lines, that they let us know, and we can certainly find some solutions there. We want you to self-check your temperature before you attend practice, just to make sure you're not running a temperature. And we also are going to maintain social distancing as much as possible in this program. So the coaches will keep distant from the players. You can kind of see the diagram over to the side where you can see the X. And the X is the way we normally would do things. We'd bring kids in, we'd put our hands in, we would do our cheer and things of that nature. Well, this year things are going to be a little different. Now we have to be spaced apart. And so the diagram above just shows proper spacing between players. Really that I couldn't find the exact photo I was wanting to crop in there, but if you take that player in the center who is the coach in this diagram, and maybe you put them on the outside, so maybe you're now in a circle. So we're going to teach our players to form circles, or we're going to use cones and say stand next to a cone, and then we can create our distancing that way, so that when we're talking and we're going over things, we've got some different strategies to use. And I think once the kids get used to it, they will be able to manage that fine. And we were able to test that this summer. We've been running soccer practices all summer with summer soccer camps, as well as our competitive level programs have been training all summer. And so we've been using these strategies, and we've kind of learned that the very first time everybody's a little bit doesn't quite understand. But after it's done the very first time and everybody's experienced it, then the next week it just becomes flawless and smooth, and from that standpoint. So just know that we've been testing these strategies out throughout the summer, and that's what we're bringing to you here. So coaches we use cones or other markers to help maintain social distancing during the training sessions. And then at breaks, we're going to talk about how we're going to keep our social distancing when we're doing water breaks and things of that nature. And I'll go through those diagrams in a minute. We're also going to ask the players how they're feeling. And if somebody's sick, we might even, just call their parent right over and say, so-and-so's not feeling too well today. I'd like to ask that, maybe they don't participate today, and let's just check back in later. And, those are going to be questions that we're going to have to ask players. And CDC is recommending that we ask that just to make sure that everybody's good to go. If there's any issues, you can call that parent over and remove that player and move forward. Coaches, you're going to make sure that you have your individual equipment. Your own water, your own bag. We're going to provide cones for you, and we're also going to provide extra balls. Each player is going to bring their own ball to the practice. We normally don't do that. Normally we supply all the equipment, and so when you show up, there would be balls everywhere. But with COVID-19, they're requesting that we have each player bring their own ball. They're okay, share, like if the ball's shared during the game, as long as it's not something where kids are constantly picking it up and then the next kid so we're limiting that as much as possible. Coaches will be the only people to handle equipment. So we want the coaches to be the ones handling the cones and moving the cones and picking up the cones. That's a little different than how we've done things in the past. We used to have the kids go run and grab a few cones and bring them back to us. But with COVID-19, we're just asking the coaches to be in charge of picking up and placing the cones. Coaches will wear a face mask during the training sessions. That's going to be something that'll be new for everybody. We've been doing it all summer long, and our competitive level coaches have been doing it as well. And the feedback from myself, as well as the people that I've talked to, is it was a little bit, maybe uncomfortable the very first time you did it, and then you quickly, are fine. You learn it, and it's fine, and everybody's fine, and it works out really smoothly. I think the reason why we like that rule for the coaches to wear the face mask during the session is I think it just makes everybody feel safe. It keeps the coach safe. They're going to be the loudest speaking person, so they're going to be the one talking mostly, and so having the mask on the coaches is how we're doing things this season, pretty much in all of our age groups, even in our competitive level program. Coaches will maintain social distance from all persons in training environment 6 feet apart, and that's just something that you'll figure out as you go, and we're going to kind of show you some slides that'll help explain that a little bit further later. All right, so players, same thing. They're going to self-assess. Any player that's sick is not going to come, and we're going to ask that they stay home for 14 days prior to returning if they happen to be sick. Parents and players are responsible for temperature checks before they come, and then we're going to ask that every player bring a ball and a water bottle. Players are not to touch or share anybody else's equipment except for the soccer ball with their feet. And then players should wash hands thoroughly before coming and upon returning home from training. We're going to ask that the players wear the mask before and after training, so as they're coming out to the field, and then once they get to their assigned area, then they can take that off. This includes going from the car to the field, and but the masks are not required during the physical exercise. Players will practice social distancing, staying 6 feet apart, and we're going to kind of go over that, how we're going to do that. And that's going to happen during water breaks and before we get started, during our breaks, and then at the end. Player equipment should be washed and sanitized before and after each training. This information is going to be sent obviously to the parents as well. All player equipment needs to be clearly labeled. We're going to ask that it's labeled just so that it makes it easy to find things and nobody's picking up other people's things. And then for parents, same thing, self-check, temperature check. We're going to ask that the parents remain at the field the entire time. Just in case there's an issue, we want to make sure that they're there. If there's a bad weather or anything along those lines, we're going to send everybody to their cars. We don't want people to congregate underneath trees or under shelters or things of that nature at this time. So if there's severe weather, we want to make sure all the families are there so the child can, go back to their car. We're going to ask that parents and siblings wear face coverings at the facility when outside their car as well. So players that are not able or willing to comply with the safety protocols may be asked not to return to practice until the rules can be relaxed or they're willing to be adhered to. So that's going to be something that'll be explained. Goes on to talk about in case of dangerous weather, parents should be at the field. Parents should also not enter the playing area unless asked to do so by the coaches. There is going to be some activities that we're going to use parents this season just because of the types of activities we normally do might not be as safe at this time. So we're going to limit those and we're going to pick our times to engage in like a game-like environment versus keeping the players separate, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Parents will ensure all equipment, cleats, balls, shin guards are sanitized before and after each training session. And then parents must notify the club immediately if their player becomes ill or has been exposed to someone who's become ill. And there's a couple of email addresses they'll send that information along to. We'll obviously work with the CDC and they'll make recommendations based on the exposure that player had. Parents should not assist the coaching staff with equipment before or after training. So normally you would ask the parents help to maybe pick up things and that sort of thing. But this year we're going to ask that the parents do not do that. It's a little more work on the coaches, but I think in the end it just creates a safer environment. So we're going to have some play date modifications. We call in the U4 to U6 program, we call them play dates because you have a practice followed by a game scenario. At the U4 level, you're going to have more practice at the beginning, and then we'll introduce the game later on in the season. For the younger players, we might do that for the first week or two, and then we'll get to it with the 5U and 6U programs, but you'll get to the game aspect quicker in those age categories. And the reason why we do that with the 4Us is they need a little bit of time before they're quite ready to play. The game poses a little bit of stress if they're not quite understanding some of the just the movement associated with soccer and some of the skills associated with soccer. It helps for them to go through a couple weeks before we get to the game. And we've done that the last 5 or 6 seasons, and the feedback from the coaches has been that's been the right introduction. And so we're going to continue to do it that way. Okay, so let's get right to the bullet points. Okay, so we're going to shorten the game phase a little bit right now. We're also going to implement some alternative games with less players competing, and I'll go through that once we get towards the end. Social distancing from the start. So, normally when younger players get to the field, they see their friends and they come up and they're hugging and wrestling and things of that nature. We're not going to allow that, obviously, and so we're going to have the parents walk their player over to a assigned space just as we get started, and the parent will just wait with their player right there until the coach is ready to get started. And that'll just keep the social distancing aspect as we get started. We'll kind of show you some diagrams here in a minute. Also, include parents' help with some of the activities. I mentioned that where previously we wouldn't, but with COVID-19, I'm going to show you later why that is going to be beneficial to us. There's going to be no handshakes, high fives, or huddles So things are going to be a little different from that standpoint. Like I said, we might have a bring in circle and train our group how to form a large circle, and that way we can do air fives in our circle, or we can do things of that nature. No line activities. So line activities where players are standing next to each other for long periods of time is what we want to avoid. That's where the virus transmission happens, is when you're next to someone for 2 to 3 minutes or 5 minutes. Those are the times where that can happen. What we found with soccer, though, because of the intermittent contact and the very small trace contacts of how the game's played, players really aren't getting it from each other, and that's kind of been studied all summer long. And so that's been really encouraging, and that's given us a lot of confidence to have this season. But we obviously want to have our protocols in place just to make it as safe as we can. One of the things that we've learned in life is that there's risk with pretty much everything we do. If we go to the grocery store, there's risk there. If we go into a Walmart or Target or Best Buy for a need that we have, there's a little bit of risk there. And anytime you're playing a sport, there's going to be a little risk there. But we want to minimize those risks, and that's the reason why we're putting these rules into place. All right, risk management, safe sport. Now, as you become a coach in ABYSA, you will have to do risk management once a year, and it's always in the fall when you start. And then if you continue to coach with us each fall, you have to refill it out. And it's just a background check that is done on all the coaches throughout the state. So that's just something you have to make sure that you've had no crimes against children or things that would keep you from working with children. And that's just part of how we keep kids safe. And with that is also included if you see number 2, the safe sport abuse training modules. It's also law now that coaches have to go through the safe sport training. And this probably goes back to, the U.S. Olympic gymnastics and the different programs where there's been some unsavory adults involved that have manipulated people. The government has come up with these new ways to make sure that coaches can learn about abuse and how to recognize abuse and things of that nature. So these modules are going to be something that you'll have to complete. And then once you complete those modules, then you'll be done with your risk management certification. It takes a little bit of time, but you'll definitely learn a lot, and it'll be worth it in the end. And then you'll upload that certificate, and you'll be done. So what happens in that process is if many of you have already gotten that link emailed to you from me. If not, that link will be emailed to you immediately after this meeting. I'm also going to be sending this video out in case you want to watch it again. That covers risk management. Okay, so also after this meeting, I'm going to post the rosters, and so within the next day, and that'll allow you to see who's on your team, and you'll be able to pull up that roster online. I'll send you the directions to pulling up the roster in this email. Pulling up the roster for the very first time is a little confusing, but as long as you follow the directions that I provide to you, you'll pull it right up and it'll be no problem. But as you can see here, our max roster for you is 7 to 10 players. And the reason why we do it that way, we do it in one big group, and then we allow the coach those players will actually play. Once you get to the game portion, you actually play within your group the entire season. Everybody will get to know each other. It's a great way to introduce the soccer to kids. And so that's why those group sizes are a little bit larger. And then in the 5U, 6U, and then the 5, 6U girls division, we're going to end up playing 3 versus 3. We might even do some 2 versus 2 or 1 versus 1 activity. But generally, we play 3 on 3 at that age category when it's not a COVID-19 season. We will go to a 7th player because every now and then a coach will have a best friend that wants to join, and we'll certainly do that. At this age, we found that not everybody shows up to every game. This is the age where, hey, if we got a chance to go camping, we're going to go do that, and we might miss the soccer game, and it's no big deal. And so oftentimes you'll be missing 2 or 3 players from your team on any given weekend. So we do allow up to a 7th player if the coach wants that. We certainly won't put a 7th player on there unless you tell us that you want one. How late player additions happen is once the rosters post. Some of you might have 4 players on your team, some might have 5, some might even have 6. Once we post the rosters, if you've got 6, you've pretty much got a full roster unless you want to join, add somebody. But if you've got 4, and we very likely might add the next sign up to your team. And when we add that sign up to your team, we're going to email you, and we're also going to email that family updated roster that shows that we've added that player to that team, and then you'll just reach out and call that family and connect with them. If you have a player that wants to drop, let's say their family just decided they're not going to play soccer this season, then just have them email me, and I can process a refund for them. Also, if you have somebody that says, hey, for some reason I'm not connected with my best friend and this isn't right, don't worry, you don't have to stress over that. Just say, hey, just reach out to this gentleman here, Shane at ABYSA.org, and I'll look into it and see if I can connect them with a friend. Hopefully we don't get a ton of that, but we certainly can handle that. Also have in here, I have a small team. So if you have a team, let's say there's 4 players, and you have a friend or 2 that you could reach out to and say, hey, you want to play soccer this season? They can sign up, they can request you in the special request field, and I can connect them with you and add them to your roster. So just know that is available. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the practice phase. I had this slide in here for my older group that practices out at community fields. Your group, because it's a 1 day a week, you don't have that weekly practice and then the game on the weekend. In ABYSA at 7U, you now add a weekly practice during the week and then a game on Saturday. But up until 7U, it's 1 day a week, which incorporates a practice and a game on the weekend. At the 4U, we don't always do the game, but for the 5 and 6U, we do. Just a reminder, follow all the protocols. Wearing your face covering. Players are going to wear their face covering to and from. During water breaks, we're going to send players to their assigned cone just to keep them socially distant. No line activities, 6 feet apart. Always in this program, the 5 and 6U, you will be assigned a game against another coach. And in this scenario, you and the other coach will meet, say hello, and then you oftentimes do the activities together. So you're going to work together with your opponent, the other coach, during the practice phase, and then you'll break apart during the game phase to play against each other. And the way that we're assigning you this year, we're assigning you 2 teams to a large space. There's going to be lots of space, so if coaches even wanted to have 2 games going on at the same time, you're going to be able to do that. That'll make more sense once I get into these slides. And then finish on time for the next team coming in. That's just something that we always do. We want to make sure that we're able to clear the fields as well as the parking area for that next group of players that are coming in, just so that we don't have overcrowding during COVID times. And then we're asking that the coaches help us leave the field clean and clear of water bottles and debris. So at the end of your session, if you could just look around and see if anybody's left anything and those sort of things, and just make sure you help us with that and picking those things up. And if it's trash, we can throw it in the trash. There's a trash can right on the way out to the parking lot. All right, so practice tips continued. You want to make sure that when you're calling your team families, you remind them to all bring a ball with them to the first play date. It's always recommended to get to the field a little bit early, allows you to set up. We're going to have everything set up right to start the day, and then we're going to go in between the groups and try our best to have everything set up. But in the event there's something goes wrong, you might want to be there a few minutes early just to make sure the space is set up the way that you and your coach partner would like it going into the first activity. You're going to have 1 to 2 minute water breaks as needed. I always tell coaches that 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-olds generally go all out until they crash, and they're not really able to pace themselves like older players do. Like an older player, we're going to sprint some, we're going to jog some, we're going to relax some. We might even walk some during a game just to kind of pace ourselves throughout a game. Younger players generally go 90 miles an hour until they can't anymore. And so they generally need water breaks more frequently than older players do. So just know that. Always recommend recruiting an assistant or a volunteer helper from one of your parents. If you have someone that's ready to step on and be your assistant coach all season, then just send their information to me and I'll send them the information to get set up. But oftentimes having a go-to parent just to, maybe it's the game phase and you're on the field, we'll kind of talk about that in a minute, with the players, and you'd like a parent just to sit next to or right around the players that aren't playing, just to monitor them, make sure they're staying, where they're supposed to be. Also, we want you to make sure you have everything you need, your mask and your hand sanitizer. I always recommend to coaches that just find a bag sitting around the house that you're not using. Put a mask in there, put some hand sanitizer in there, put your roster in there, and just put it in the back of your car. And then every week when you get out, you know that that's in there. You can grab it and just walk out to the field, and it just takes the stress away from that for you. Definitely recommend that. And then what will ABYSA provide coaches at the field? We will have a program table there with the staff person. So if you have a question or concern, especially on the first day, sometimes uniforms, things of that nature, we will have a staff there to help. We're going to have uniforms there. So we're going to have a uniform pickup that you'll be able to come and pick up your uniforms. But for some reason, if you miss that, we're going to be able to bring those to the field on the first day. If you have any late signups, maybe they signed up at the last minute, got added to your roster 2 days before the first play date, we're going to have their uniform there for them at the field. We're also going to have the field set up prior to your arrival, so everything will look the way it's supposed to when you get there. We'll have cones set aside for you because some of the activities require cones, and you'll be able to have access to cones to set up those activities. You'll also have some scrimmage vests there to be used during the game. At the end of each game, we're not reusing the scrimmage vest for the next group, so you'll have to bring your scrimmage vest to the program table, and they'll go in a bag. Then we'll wash those after each use. Practice plans, in case you forget, we always have those. So we're going to email you each week with your practice plans for your practice. And if for some reason you show up and you're like, oh man, I forgot my practice plans, they're on the kitchen table, all you've got to do is walk over to the program table. They'll have some copies for you, and you can grab a copy and take it to your field. And that way you've got your cheat sheet as you're going through your practice if needed. We'll also, various times during the season, have some handouts for the players. There is a day we do something called the ABC Pediatric Sportsmanship Awards Day, and on that day, all the players get a little sportsmanship medallion. That's something that we'll do. So on that day, you would go and grab those, as well as at the end of the season, we're going to have your team medals available for pickup at the program table. So you can grab those, hold those, and then once your last game's over, you'll be able to pass out the medals to the players. What should I do now? Some of this information is not necessarily pertinent, like the scheduling the practice. That was for my older age group, so we're not going to worry about that. Once rosters post, we are asking that you reach out to your team and just introduce yourself, invite them out to the first play date. We are going to provide you uniforms, and we'll go over those dates here in a second. And we do ask the coaches, because this program is not, you don't meet before the first game. And in our older age groups, you meet at practice. You have a couple of practices before you play your first game. In these programs, you're actually meeting all there at the field the very first time. Some of our coaches have offered uniform pickup opportunities to families, and that's certainly, you could do that. But there again, you could also pick up your uniforms and then pass it out on the first day. That's certainly a doable option as well. We're going to be super flexible this season. That's one of the next points. You say plan to stay flexible. With COVID-19, this is our first time, your first time, everybody's first time, parents, players. So we just want everybody to be flexible and just all work together, and we're going to figure this out and get through it and have fun and enjoy ourselves. Okay, so our uniform pickup dates are here, September 14th and September 16th. Between 4 and 6:30 p.m. On either one of those days, you'll drive over to our office and pick up your uniforms and anything else that you need. We're also going to provide you with a coach's handbook, your practice plans for your very first practice, and just other materials that we think you need to read through going into your very first practice play date. So those are the dates. I'll email you a reminder about that. So you'll have this information here. You can certainly write it down and plug it into your day timer now or in your phone, but I'll certainly be emailing you a reminder about those dates as well. Okay. So I kind of put some slides in here to kind of give you an idea of how we're going to set things up. As you can see in this diagram, you've got the players in white with their ball. And then you've got the person in yellow behind them. And in this diagram, that's their parent. So as players arrive to the field, you're going to assign them to an area. Their parent's going to wait with them till you're ready to get started. And that way it just keeps the players in their safe areas before we get going. Just wanted to kind of give you an idea of that. The black players that individuals that you see here are our coaches in this scenario, and they're in the middle and they're instructing the different movements and activity. You can see the space in between here. So in those age groups, we have anywhere between 7 and 9 players, so we'll have the appropriate spaces for that age category. Now, activities with parents. So let's say we decide we're going to incorporate, so this player here would be partnered with their own parent. So obviously we're not going to partner a child with another child's parent. We want to keep everything in-house. So in this scenario, this is a game called Ouch, where the players are dribbling around trying to shoot the ball and hit their parents below the knees. If they can hit their parent, the parent says, ouch. And so that's a game that we would normally do with our coaches. We would be in a square and all the kids would be dribbling around trying to hit their coaches. But we might play it this way this season just to kind of keep everybody a little bit more distant from each other and limit those exposures. So that could be an example of how we might use the parent with the child. And on those weeks that we do that, we'll certainly send an email out so that the parents are aware of that. And then you'll be able to reach out to them as well, and everybody will be on the same page. But there might be some activities throughout the season where we're going to utilize their parent within the activity. And so this would be an example of that. And then here's an example without the parents. So, same sort of format. With our 5 and 6U, some of our fields are going to be lined, some of them are going to be coned, just depending on where you're playing. But this kind of gives you some ideas. Actually, I meant to move that slide later. I'm going to come back to that one. This is how we might start the day, very similar to how we did with the 4U. In this if you notice, there's a few more boxes because if every child shows up and we have 12 players there, this setup allows us to have 12 players in their own space. And then we can take them through various skills within their own space. We can even set up cones I might have cones where you put a cone here and here, and the players have to dribble it. There's so many things we can do within this setup, but this just kind of gives you an idea of how we can social distance players apart during certain activities. And like I said, when we showed that the diagram with the U4s having their parent there, we're going to do the same thing with the 5s and 6-year-olds. So we're going to have a parent here, just before we get started, just making sure that each player's in their area, and their parent will be in charge of making sure that they stay in their area until we get started, and then we'll let the parents go. Now you also can see in this diagram, we've got the yellow cones here up at the top, spaced out. Those are going to be our break cones. So at different times when we're taking our water breaks, we want to make sure that players are assigned. So as players arrive, you're going to have them pick out a cone. They're going to place their water bottle next to one of these cones, and then you're going to bring them in, and then you're going to assign them to a box. That's going to be their area, just to wait until we get started. And this seems a little bit different than usual, but it's just once everybody gets used to it, it'll run smoothly. Once everybody gets used to it. I'm also going to be emailing the parents some of these slides too. I'm still developing all of the material, obviously, and we got a little bit of time before that happens. This diagram here is a game model that we might use right at the beginning with the 5 and 6-year-olds, just so that we limit the amount of players. At this age group, they don't spread out as much as in some of the older age groups. They tend to all want the ball and try to go to the ball. And so by limiting the amount of players that are involved, we can make the game a little bit safer. So in this game, we call it secret number. So we have the coaches in the middle with, actually I should probably put more balls here, but basically the coach is going to knock out a ball and say 1. If they call out 1, then this player, this team's 1 comes out to try to win the ball. This player's 1 comes out and try to win the ball. This team's trying to score in this goal. This team's trying to score in this goal. And so we can play a game, but only using 2 players against each other versus having 3 players against each other like we normally would. And I think as we get through the first couple of weeks and the players start to learn the different protocols and game modifications, then we can start incorporating 2 versus 2 and 3 versus 3 and make it more normal. But just kind of getting everybody used to it. This might be a model that we use the first couple of weeks to start getting them going, learning how to, one team's going one direction, one team's going the other direction. You've got to run to try to win the ball and then dribble it and try to score, and then and that sort of thing. Okay, well, that concludes our presentation. Like I said, we are going to send this out to everyone, so you'll get a chance to look at this again if you'd like. Also, if during this presentation you happen to have a few questions that weren't addressed, feel free to email them to me. My email address is right here, shane@abysa.org. If it's something that I think, yeah, I should definitely share that with all the coaches, I'll make sure that I include your question into the next coaches communication. You're going to get a weekly communication from me. So each week I'm going to send you the next week's curriculum for your practice phase. And then whatever game phase we're going to do, whatever game we're going to do for that particular week, I'll also include that in our communication each week. So you'll always get information from me throughout the season. At any time you can respond. I prefer email. It just is easier to manage. So shooting me an email is better than a phone call sometimes. However, if you want to call and talk to me about something, I'm more than willing to talk to you as well. And I'll include my cell phone number and the email that goes out to you, the next communication. Coaches, thank you so much for coaching. You're going to have a blast. I know this is going to be a little different, but it will work out. We were all a little bit worried about it right at the beginning when we first started our summer camps. And then after the first session, we were like, oh, okay, this is fine. You just kind of change with the times and adapt to the COVID-19 protocols, and things will work out just fine. If you ever have any concerns, certainly reach out to me. What's going to happen as soon as this meeting's over is within the next 24 hours to 48 hours, your rosters are going to post. You'll start to see who's on your team. You're going to go ahead and reach out to them. The first play date was originally going to be on the 19th. So when I originally sent out information to everybody, it said that our first game was going to be on the 19th. But we decided to go ahead and postpone that back to the 26th of September. We needed a little bit more time, especially with our older age groups, securing practice fields and things of that nature. And we just decided we were going to start all games on the 26th of September. That should have the season running through the middle of November. If we get a rain out, we could potentially play on the 21st of November as our last game. Hopefully we don't. But we also could utilize a Sunday afternoon, to play some games. So, if we have some rainouts and we need to make up games, we might play on Saturday and Sunday afternoon on a weekend just to kind of make things up. But that's going to be rare and only if needed. But otherwise, you'll play on Saturday mornings for the most part. Our time slots are going to be 9, 10:30 for most of you. So 9 and 10:30. There might be a 12 o'clock time slot for a few groups. Our intentions are to play at 2 different facilities. So we're going to have some teams play majority of their games on the west side at the Bunker County Sports Park. And then we're going to have some teams play a majority of their games on the east side at the John B. Lewis Soccer Complex. However, you might, play at either or facility. So just know that, like we said, we want everybody to be as flexible as possible this season. We're going to try to get, there's players from all over. There's going to be players from Madison County. There's going to be players from Black Mountain. There's going to be players from Hendersonville, because Hendersonville Youth Soccer is not doing their season this year. So we've got some players joining us from Hendersonville. And then, of course, we'll have players that come from, as far as Canton, that join in our program. So we certainly want to give teams as close a game as possible to their home, but also on every now and then you might have to go to the other side of town. So just be flexible on that. We will post the schedules by September 16th. So know that on September 16th, the schedules will post for the 26th. That gives everybody 10 days notice before their first game. If there's a specific time slot that you have to have, let's say you go to work every Saturday at 10:30, so the 9 o'clock time slot's very important to you, then email me at at the email address right there, and I'll make sure that I can try my best to accommodate your request. I think that pretty much covers it. Thanks again for coaching. If you have any questions, just feel free to reach out to me, and I'll see you guys out on the fields. Bye.